Let's start here. July 2025. 5 former members of Canada's World Junior Hockey team were acquitted of sex assault. A lot of Canadians were surprised. I wasn't one of them. Decades ago, I covered sex assault trials, and rarely did they end up in convictions, which got me to thinking, has anything changed? The answer is no. Check out these numbers from Stats Canada. It's estimated that here in Canada, more than 2,500 people are sexually assaulted every single day. That's more than 900,000 victims a year. But you won't see that reflected in the courts because fewer than 6% of those victims will report the assaults to the police. And of those reports, only about 1/3 will result in charges being laid. And of those charges, just 60% will end up in court. And of those charged who end up in court, fewer than half will actually be convicted. So let me do the math for you. Of those 900,000 victims that we started off with, fewer than 5,000 will have justice in the courts. And one of the biggest challenges, the issue of consent. Which comes as no surprise to survivors like Pierre-Roscelli.
I know myself, and I know who I am, and I'm not a liar. That person sexually assaulted me. That is what happened to me. He did that.
Jewel is talking about the night she was sexually assaulted.
I didn't think I was going to survive that night.
2 years ago, she'd run into a professional acquaintance at a social. He wanted to go to a party with her. She said no. She was drunk. She just wanted to go home. But he didn't drive her home. He took her to a motel and sexually assaulted her.
I had to think, do I fight and potentially end up being hurt more than what's going to happen? Or just survive?
As soon as she could, she escaped.
I just cried. I didn't know where I was. What I just experienced, what just happened to me.
From there, she did everything a victim of crime is supposed to do. She went to the hospital for treatment. She made a statement to police. It wasn't enough. 5 months later, she got a phone call from the Crown Attorney.
And she said, based on the evidence that you've submitted, we don't feel it's enough for him to be charged. And then she said, so it's over.
At issue, consent. Jewel couldn't prove that she didn't give consent. Even though she was intoxicated, he could overpower her and she knew it. She was scared for her life.
I didn't say yes. I did what I needed to do to survive.
And that, say advocates, is not the same as consent. Isabel Daniels works with survivors of sexual violence, and she's also a survivor herself.
People do not understand what it's like to be a woman in a situation with a person that can overpower you, with a situation where we have multiple people being discarded like garbage, where we have women that are not making it home because of homicide, rape.
And those who do make it home, they don't usually see justice served.
The perpetrator often has more rights than the victim. They don't have to prove they didn't do that. We have to prove that they did.
With sexual violence cases, these are cases that often happen behind closed doors in private settings, and there's not necessarily other witnesses to the event. So part of the challenge that you have is establishing that standard of proof.
Chantal Boutin is a Crown Attorney here in Winnipeg.
It isn't about that we don't believe you. I can't think of a time when I heard a story from a survivor that I did not believe.
But sometimes believing the victim didn't consent isn't enough, despite the fact the victim is telling the truth.
It just doesn't equate with what is required to satisfy a burden of proof. And that is never a satisfactory answer, for somebody that has experienced intense trauma.
So as it turns out, the Office of the Federal Ombudsman for Victims of Crime also has concerns about how sex assault survivors are treated in the justice system. That's why they've spent the last year examining those concerns. They're expected to release a report and recommendations mid-November. Donna Carrero, CBC News, Winnipeg.